Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this talk, the panel talk about neurodiversity. I just want to first of all say, if you are overwhelmed by the noise or anything like that, there is a quiet room up. You'll see on the wall it says 18, but the room behind there is a quiet room on the next floor up. There are stairs over there just to the left of the toilets where you can go to be able to be quiet if it's overwhelming for you. So today is about neurodiversity and how it affects dancers. I've got a panel out the back, all of whom have either going through assessments for ADHD or autism, or they have already been diagnosed. So they're going to talk about how it's affected them, both positively and negatively, and how they've dealt with situations. So, but first of all, I'm going to explain about neurodiversity. There are 5 main neurodiverse spectrum disorders: dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, ADHD, and autism. There are a lot of stratas of diagnoses for that, such as Tourette's is one of them. So today we are going to be discussing how it affects performing artists. And my panel today are all professionals in the business. So I'll bring them on now. Annette Walker, Lucy Turner. And I want a big clap for him when you come on. Annette Walker, Lucy Turner, Chloe Francis, Ash Mukherjee, Joseph Galea. Please take your seats. I'll have the end one there. I'll have that one, Ash. I'm going to be on the end. Yeah, okay. You take the mic. I'm going to put the headphones on so I can hear myself above the noise and I can hear the other panelists. So while I'm doing that, let's start from Annette, the other end. Say who you are, what you do. I give her a mic. There's another mic here.
Hello. Hi. My name is Annette Walker. I am a freelance tap dancer and I produce my own shows with my own jazz band. But I'm also currently a full-time PhD student studying dance history and tap dance.
Hello, I'm Lucy Turner and I'm a dance artist, choreographer and teacher. I'm also a disability representative on Move It's Creative Advisory Board. And yeah, I've got a few physical disabilities and then also I've got different neurodivergencies, and so yeah, super excited to add to the conversation today.
Hello, my name is Chloe Francis and I am a dancer. I've recently graduated and set up our own company, Sensational. We teach dance classes for children with SEN. We wanted to provide more opportunities for them.
Hi, my name is Joseph Galea. I am a dancer, singer, music producer, and one of the head dancers of AWA, Atypical with Attitude. And I'm here to learn. I'm here to give off my experiences of what it's like to dance and represent in the neurodiverse community. And yeah, I'm just happy to be in this environment with everybody here.
Hi, my name is Ash Mukherjee, and my pronouns are he and they, and I am a South Asian dancer. I trained in Bharatanatyam in India, in Calcutta, and also in southern India, and then I came here. And I now work with queer immigrants. I also create my own work as a choreographer, but also as a writer, writing queer stories, and seeing queerness within neurodivergence and what that means for me. And I'm also I am awaiting diagnosis officially in my areas of neurodivergence. So this is an incredible panel to be on. Thank you.
So we're just sorting out where the mics are coming and going. And I think we can share that from there. So I'm just going to read out what the title of this panel is. So, an opportunity to discuss whether educators and teachers can think and work differently when teaching dance. Our panel discussion, a series of alternative strategies to cover a range of dancers with different needs in the room. Together, let's find an approach and best practice that allows us to be truly inclusive and to support neurodivergent students and students with disabilities. And you all remember to hold that mic up. Okay, first question. How do we shift a perspective from focusing on specific diagnoses to understanding the unique learning styles and needs of neurodivergent dancers? Joe, would you like to start on that? You need the mic.
Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, sure. Now, you see, this is an instance of teachers and how to do it, because someone with ADHD gets very distracted. So because Joe didn't realize he was going to be answering the question, and I'm going to repeat it, okay? Is that all right? Good explanation?
Please.
Yeah. Keep your mic up to your mouth. How do we shift perspective from focusing on specific diagnoses to understanding the unique learning styles and needs of neurodivergent dancers? Right?
Okay, interesting question. So, I think it personally comes down to the individuality of every neurodivergent, because everybody's different and unique in their own ways, and they have their own way of expressing themselves. It's a matter of understanding the limitations of each and every individual and breaking down the barriers of what it is they are limited to. And if we're talking about the grand landscape of things, I would say personally, from the ground up, building, let's say for example, dance industries from the ground up for neurodivergence would be a more effective way than having, what am I trying to say, than let's say neurotypical dance industries making adjustments for neurodivergent people, because it's not the most effective way to understand their limitations, because then it's like there will be too many compromises and there will be a lot of confusion, a lot of like, I don't know, in some cases there might be heads bumping, and it's not going to result in like the most effective way. So, for example, in schools there are lots of neurodivergence. In fact, neurodiversity in schools is becoming more represented as time went on, way more than when I was a kid. And highlighting them, and not just that, just highlighting every single neurodivergent kid in schools and understanding the various disabilities, whether it's autism, ADHD, Down syndrome, etc. And not only that, each and every neurodivergent condition is on a spectrum, so some are severe, some are lower. You got to try and understand what it is that they are limited to, and then really try to focus on what's best for them, and giving them the space and the opportunity for them to express themselves. So I hope that's keeping in track with the
Thank
question.
you, Joe. Thank you. Lucy, you were nodding away there, and you're holding the microphone. Off you go.
Yeah, perfect combo. I feel like focusing on a diagnosis isn't very helpful because lots of people don't have diagnoses for their conditions. And so I think focusing on what the actual learning needs are rather than a diagnosis is super important. So I think talking to your dancers about what affects them rather than how they are like what their condition is super important. And I think focusing on different areas of the things that neurodivergency can affect rather than the actual conditions themselves. For example, memory is often affected in neurodivergence, and so is coordination sometimes, and energy. And so I think if facilitators can focus on those areas rather than being like, oh, I've got to juggle so many different neurodivergent dancers in my class, I feel like that is the most important thing.
Thank you, Lucy. Sophie, would you, as a teacher, like to talk next?
Yeah, so again, you can have a child with autism and another child with autism, and you have to realize the severity of it and not not two children are the same. You have to understand they're different, like you said. You have to understand their strengths and differences within the class. Some of them react differently. Some of them need the extra attention. Some of them prefer to go off independently and learn. You have to find out how they learn best and not like you need to find techniques that work within them and not with their diagnosis.
Sorry, it's Chloe, isn't it? Not
Yeah.
Sophie. Sorry. The expression on your face when I said that.
Yeah, I was a bit confused.
Thank you. Joe, would you give the microphone to... the one you've got. Give it to Ash. Okay, Ash.
So what was your question again? Would you mind repeating?
Can you see what happens here with people with ADHD?
Yeah.
So Ash has lost the question already. So you cannot hold on, for some people, cannot hold on to information that's needed. So do you want to read that?
So how do we shift perspective from focusing on specific diagnosis to understanding the unique learning styles and needs of neurodivergent dancers? As much as, I'm awaiting diagnoses myself, as much as labels and diagnoses are important, I feel I'm not saying it does that all the time, but in some spaces it can create an environment of dismissiveness. Oh, that person has ADHD. They're just going to figure it out. And it kind of takes away the responsibility the facilitator has for creating access within that space. And creating access within that space starts for me as a teacher. If I go into the space thinking, oh, I wanted to choreograph this today, and that's my agenda, and I'm not really focusing on the need of the space. I think need creates support, want creates pressure. And when I'm in that space and I'm working with dancers there, I can see them as a whole and not just as their diagnosis. And then when they lead that space of access, when they start turning up for their own needs, they allow me to turn up for my own needs. And then there's more of a symbiotic space that grows. I hope that makes sense.
Annette, you pass the mic.
Thank you, Terry. Thinking on my own experience, I had quite a late diagnosis in November, so this wasn't something that was taken into consideration when I was learning dance as a child. But I think of myself as a teacher, and what I think about in the room is how can I approach what I'm teaching to all the different people who might be learning in different ways. So rather than, again, focusing on a specific diagnosis, it's actually having an open mind and being able to modify the way that you approach how you're teaching.
I think on that note, whilst you're holding the mic, and we'll go through the other panelists, what could teachers do to improve? Because my feeling is that when you look at a class or when you're choreographing something, there are three basic learning styles: the kinesthetic, auditory, and the visual. Do you think that teachers or choreographers or directors need to understand that neurodivergent people have other ways of learning which are being ignored?
I, again, can speak with my experience as a tap dancer, because tap dance is quite a difficult art form to learn. And when I was a child, the way that it was presented to me wasn't accessible. So I was, here are some names of steps and here are some counts, and it didn't make sense to me. I was very fortunate because I was able to memorize the rhythm, and I was able to kind of reconstruct what the steps and the counts were based on my own memory of a rhythm. So when I'm now thinking of teaching, it is taken into consideration that people are going to be processing the information in different ways. So having a variety of ways into the steps and into the routines, and the repetition that's required is not necessarily doing it repeating the same way. You can be repeating in different ways. So an example for tap dancers, I don't know if there's any tap dancers here, Yes. If I'm teaching a time step and I was told, shuffle, hop, step, lap step, which didn't make any sense to me, but I understood the rhythm, shika-da, diga-daga. And then I'll find that some people prefer the counts, 8 and 1, 2 and 3 out. And then I've also discovered through conversations with students that some need diagrams, some need written down. And this is an exploratory process. So there isn't like, I've found a way and that's the only way that it works. It's a constant dialogue. It's understanding that the teacher and the learner are in constant dialogue of the different ways that you can learn.
Thank you. Joe, would you like to take that up? What you found difficult before getting a diagnosis, before telling anyone?
Right, so I was diagnosed with autism at around 3, 4 years old, so it was very early in my time. And not to get into too much detail, mainstream primary schools will not accept me, and throughout year 1. Year 2, I eventually got into a school called Hillingdon Manor School around Uxbridge, and pretty much spent 13 years at that school. And just quickly going back, just tracing the question again.
What techniques could have been used for you when you were learning, and especially in the dance, singing, and performing arts?
Right, so it was a matter of a format. So I remember when I was younger and I wanted to get into dance, there are a lot of dance classes that I've taken on in the past 10 years, and what I found challenging was, firstly, it was a lot of neurotypical dance studios, especially in the commercial area, is that there are lots of people. There are a lot of people condensed into one room, and then when learning choreography, I used to get stuff like sensory overload because of how many people are there doing the same thing, and it's hard to see the choreographer, and that made it very intense and difficult for me. And then there was also the extremely loud music. The music could get, let's say, in some cases, this environment we're in, hence why we're wearing these, sometimes the music could be so loud and overwhelming, whether, depending on where you are on the spectrum, it can exhaust you, it can make you so overwhelmed that you may not want to be in the environment anymore. Sometimes neurodivergents don't like loud noises. Some can tolerate it after long periods of time. But personally, what I think would have been helpful is to have the ability to get the DJ to adjust the volume, so turn it down a little bit. So not as too quiet, but it's a certain volume that is not too overwhelming. And then there's also the people, maybe less people in a room makes it a bit more easier to do dance, and for me to have less sensory overload, and also more spatial awareness, because sometimes neurodivergents like myself struggle with spatial awareness. So that would have been more helpful back then. But I don't want to say too much, but with my personal experience when it comes to dance and how I ended up where I am, it was my choreographer, Jonathan Barron, choreographer Atypical with Attitude, who's right now on his honeymoon, he's created the environment which I don't think is common enough, and that is a certain type of pacing of how to orchestrate a dance rehearsal that's catering for most people with neurodivergent, and it's enough space and music that's not so loud, and obviously you have to be really engaging and everything. And so I think that's personally what I think is really important, is that understanding of how neurodivergent people have certain adjustments, but at the same time it's not nothing too crazy. It's just a matter of just knowing what to work with.
Thank you, Joe. Chloe, would you like to take over as to what atmosphere, how you deal in your rehearsals and classes, etc.?
Okay, so in our classes we do have smaller groups because we understand the issue of sensory overload. We teach from 3 to 17 years of age, and then we have adult classes and daycare centres as well. So the younger ones tend to find it more harder with the sensory issues. If there's like lots of children running around, they get a little bit bored sometimes. You have to keep their focus because their attention span is running wild. But yeah, we keep it generally to a small number so they don't get overwhelmed. We've got some sensory equipment if they ever get a bit fidgety or whatever, and we do try to teach one-to-one. We have a few children that prefer one-to-one teaching rather than joining in with the group, so I'm more one-to-one with the children, and then you'll have Millie, my business partner, teaching the rest of the group, but they learn at the same pace, and we make sure that everyone has learned everything before, because you have to take in mind the pace that they need to learn. Like, you can't pressure them because it will go over their heads.
Thank you, Chloe. Lucy, would you like to take over those two questions there? So how did it affect you when you were learning, but also how do you, when you're choreographing, work with others?
Sure. So I have severe dyslexia, and I think when people hear that, they think, oh, she can't read or write, when that's actually like, it affects my ability to write like the least amount. What it affects more is my working memory model. It's super inefficient. And so the way that I actually work and learn things is, you know, like when you close your eyes and like you put your hands and like rub your eyes and you see like little flashes of light. I see like a literal like kaleidoscope in my brain when I learn choreography, when I'm teaching choreography. It's just how I think I absorb all information. And so for me, visualization is super important in classes. And so this industry is very much like full out, let's go bang, 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 doing it full out every single time. But for me, if I do it full out every single time, if I've messed up something, I've visually seen it. And so the next time I do it, I will visually like automatically go to the wrong version. And so if we keep doing something full out every single time, it means that it's going to get more wrong over time. So I think alternating between doing stuff full out and visualization, and also what I find super helpful is actually just like, instead of doing the choreography full out, is sitting there and just like twitching the muscles that would be needed to do like a big full move, because then that kind of gives you more muscle memory of which muscle starts the move rather than which like limbs and muscles complete the move. And so I think focusing on switching up styles rather than just going full out every single time and making it like a necessity for a good dancer to be one that can replicate and do something over and over again is where we can aim to make the dance world more accessible for people with neurodivergencies and also physical disabilities.
Thank you, Lucy. Would you like to take the mic? So I'll repeat what the questions are. So how did it affect you? Because obviously you're adult assessment now, not as a child. So how did it affect you? And how do you, as a teacher and a choreographer, work with the students?
So the way it affected me is that I didn't even know that it was affecting me, because I grew up in India and there wasn't really a dialogue for neuroexpansiveness or neurodivergence. I thought I was lazy, and I wasn't. I was literally dancing sometimes 12, 11 hours a day, and I still had this idea, oh, why am I not picking up as quickly as the others? But the way I did pick up was, I was quite joyful with my mistakes. I saw mistakes as different options, and once those options did not seem logical anymore, the right option, I almost had to earn that, and it felt really good to earn that. And I knew I was that dancer that I would take a long time picking something up, but once I picked it up, I would never forget it. So that was my strength in that space. I was hyper imaginative in that space. In some spaces that was encouraged, and in some spaces that was discouraged. I also found that when I turned up for my own needs, if there was a teacher who was undiagnosed and they had masked all their life, me turning up for my needs when they had not been able to turn up for their needs was a massive trigger for them, which then led to traumatic abusive spaces, which then led to me getting PTSD from having to mask and having to be in spaces that were that was going to create trauma for me just to be in that space. How do I look at that now? I know that I really encourage mistakes. I encourage play. I encourage laughter. There's a lot of modulation that happens in class, not modulation. There's a lot of wanting to get things right and actually not allowing ourselves to make that mistake creates tension. But when we learn to laugh and create playfulness, there's a breath that happens with that. I personally do a lot of somatic work, so I'll do lots of trance-based, so like South Asian folkloric dance naturally has somatic work built into it. I'll do things like brain spotting, so I'll add something to our hands and literally just focus on that, and then the movement takes over from that, and then the mind is calm, the breath is calmer, we're more in touch with our parasympathetic nervous system, and in that space, the dancer thrives a little bit more, and it feels safe enough to come up with, actually, I need this here. So to create the environment where they feel safe enough to talk about their needs, and then turning up for those needs.
Right, so that comes on to this: what resources are available to people who wish to learn more about a holistic, inclusive practice, or adapt their existing practice to make their current sessions more inclusive? I come to Chloe, because obviously you're at the forefront of it.
Well, obviously our first thing, you can choose to do some training specific in that area and some courses and workshops, keeping up to date with all the practices and any techniques. Yeah, you just have to... you can't really read off of a website or a book or anything, I find, because once you come into a dance class, it is completely different. That child is not going to respond to how a website will say. So you need to understand the children, get to know them, create that relationship within the classroom so that you can move forward with what's best for them yourself. That's generally how I do it.
The fact is, and it was brought up at the beginning, that everyone on the neurodiverse spectrum is different. So even if an assessment for ADHD or autism, two people get a score of 60, they're totally different because there's a spectrum of it. And so someone who's overwhelmed by sound, another person with the same score, is not overwhelmed by sound. They might be overwhelmed by light, for instance, or lots of people around them. And so what I'd like to do now, I know I'm sort of cutting people out. Joe, would you like to start with this question? So I can tell you now. What is your magic? What is your power that your neurodiversity has brought to you?
Okay. Well, my power is the love for the craft. It's the desire to become the best that I could possibly be. Regardless of my my borders and my setbacks, I try my hardest to believe in myself and to try and use, because before I used to see it as just a disadvantage, like it was something that would hold me back all the time, and I'd feel insecure and I felt useless, or I felt incompetent, that I wouldn't get to the point where I am now. So I decided at some point to twist it, but it comes with various different types of experiences. For example, I would surround myself in neurotypical environments because I always felt like, because I would mask pretty much since my adolescence, and so I never connected myself to my power and to my own neurodiverse community. So, and as a result, I ended up, there was a lot of insecurities and anxiety and various states of depression that I went through, to at some point realize that really there are so many different types of creative individuals in the neurodiverse community that are interesting, creative, funny, witty, just immensely talented that it made me feel more proud to be who I am. And so with that strength, I became closer and more intact with my own community, and it made me feel empowered, and it helped me grow as a dancer and as an artist. It was one of the greatest feelings I've had in my life, and it really just comes down to self-love and belief and accepting of who you are and accepting of your differences and your unique identity, because you could try your hardest to be as normal as whoever the hell, but then where's that going to get you? It's going to set you into a state of delusion and stress and sadness, and no one wants that. Self-love is one of the most important and most powerful things that one could do when going through their own insecurities, whether it's a physical disability or even a neurodivergent disability. You got to find aspects about you that are great, and hell, you could even say parts of your neurodiversity or your physical disability is what makes you great, it's what makes you powerful. And knowing that nothing will stop you from achieving your dreams is another thing. That just comes with the passion and the love you have for letting people know, I don't care what you think, I am who I am, and no one can tell me otherwise. And that's how I got to where I am.
Thanks, Joe. Annette, we've got the double question for you about the difficulties and the positiveness, and talk about your uniqueness and who you are. And I think that's what Joe, and it's very important everyone realizes that they are unique. You're not all sheep.
Yes, so the difficulties I didn't recognize, I think, for a really long time. Partly because I think I was so good at masking for so long. I did have an advantage in not trying to be normal, so I embraced my individuality from quite a young age. And I think that empowered me in some ways, even when I was struggling, because I wasn't kind of measuring myself against some sort of normality. For a long time, there's all sorts of different terms that people have said I'm quirky, eccentric, slightly weird, and I embrace all of those. When I had my diagnosis of ADHD, and it wasn't a surprise. In fact, a lot of friends was like, "Oh, you're one of us." But also, it came with a diagnosis of dyslexia, which I was completely surprised, because actually I thought I don't have any problems of reading and writing. And later, as I learned more about the diagnosis, I realized it's to do with my memory, my working memory, and the way that I process information. And as I, over time, have been thinking back about what the challenges I had were, I start to realize that it was related to being dyslexic and not knowing it. So there are elements of struggle. But at the same time, I'm not able to really pull apart my diagnosis from who I am. So there's parts of me that I know I'm extremely strong-willed. Some people would say stubborn. I have the ability to really kind of hyper-focus. So I've learned things from when I was quite young to a very, very high standard, because I just would apply myself to it and just keep going. And it's only later on when people have been like, well, how did you learn that? Or how did you manage to do that? I played the piano, I played the violin, I danced, I taught myself web development. I was a web developer for a very long time. These became like my superpowers. It's like self-learning, because I was able to apply myself, meant that as long as I was interested in it, I could accomplish it. The challenge was when I wasn't interested in it, because I couldn't trick myself into applying myself. So along the way, it's been really about learning about who I am. And I had a conversation with different consultants about the way that I work. And one actually said that, well, you've been quite clever, because what's happened is that I've managed to recognize what I do enjoy, what my strengths are, and put myself in those places. So dance has been one of those things that have really helped to anchor me in who I am. Music is being another one. And now I'm doing a PhD and I'm a bit scared. But again, it's because I'm hugely passionate about the subject. So there's things that I use to kind of pull me through, even though there are going to be challenges along the way.
Before I get to you, Lucy, pass the mic, I just wanted to point out that if you have a diagnosis of any one of those spectrum disorders, you're 60% likely to be diagnosable on any of the others as well, 60% likely. So when someone like Joe has been diagnosed with autism, there's a great likelihood, and I've seen it in some of the physical traits, that is also ADHD as well, which is why I mentioned.
Wondered that.
Yeah.
I'm getting tested right now.
Yeah. Okay. So well, there's the point. So when you're looking at that, I suppose really, sorry, Lucy. I suppose really I want to introduce myself for those that don't know me. I'm a psychotherapist. I have a website called counselingfordancers.com, and we're going to get to the other social medias at the end. And I have an Instagram account. My social media manager sitting down there at the moment. Is counselingfordancers_official. But I started ballet classes when I was 5 or 6, I can't remember, and I went through the vocational training of RAD, Royal Ballet. I went into the Royal Ballet Company, and then I went to English National Ballet as a soloist. I did musical theatre in the West End, film and TV. So therefore I've got a spectrum and an idea of what it's all about. So now that I'm a psychotherapist. But I also recognize the neurodiversity within me to do with the ballet training. Very black and white thinking, just like classical Indian dance, very black and white thinking. You're either right or you're wrong. And it exacerbates those traits for people who are already on the spectrum but didn't know it. And this is what I found. I'm just below, because I've done the self-assessment, I'm just below the diagnosable criteria. But I understand that. And my magic, we'll get on to you, Lucy, my magic is my drive, my push, my focus. So whenever I've left one and I've transitioned out of ballet, I started a business. And I had that drive and that focus, what I'm doing now as well. So Lucy.
Yeah, so I think my uniqueness comes from the interaction of physical and mental disabilities. So I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is like my primary disability, and it's comorbid with so many other things like fainting disorders, organ disorders, and then also my dyslexia, and I'm currently in the process of getting diagnosed for dyspraxia and auditory processing disorder too. And I think because my physical capabilities are different, I can create different shapes and different forms of my body that nobody else can. And then the interaction of the little kaleidoscope in my brain at the same time means that not only can I make unique shapes with my body, but I can also think of unique shapes with my brain. And so I get a lot of comments from people being like, I have no idea how you thought of that. How did you hear that in the musicality? Like, I didn't hear that. How does your body do that? So I think the interaction of both has actually become my superpower and then also my brand at the same time. And so it's super interesting, over the years, because I didn't get diagnosed with anything until I was 19 or 20. And so I went so many years without even realizing anything was wrong. I thought I was able-bodied. I thought I was neurotypical. And so I think just the creative ways that I've found around my barriers, I think is my superpower, because I can always find alternative routes to get to the same level as someone else, or even a level above, maybe. And so, I think that's the unique creative ways of the neurodivergent brain is, I think, my superpower.
Thank you, Lucy. Ash, you want to tell us about yours? Oh, did you get that? So before Ash says, this just reminds me about Lucy. When I was choreographing, I'd listen to the music, and I just had to close my eyes, and I could see everyone where they would be and what steps and how I do it. So there is that sort of magic that some people see things. just as Lucy.
And that's kind of been one of my earliest memories of dancing, was closing my eyes and being able to see where everyone was, the audience, what they were wearing. Like, it's just ridiculous, just seeing the whole picture. And sometimes just hearing the music, and the frustration would be, I have 80,000 different versions of that step. Which one do I choose? And kind of creating a safe space for me to go, choose anyone. Don't judge your practice in that space. But kind of mirroring with what you all have said as well, is that hyperfixation can be a superpower, but it can also have a dark side to that, in that kind of and also seeking perfection, people pleasing, were all masking, like trauma responses from masking traits that came into that space. But also what that allowed me to do, I don't know whether it's a superpower or not, but it allowed me to think 10 steps ahead. Maybe it's a trauma response, but sometimes that has really served me. And in some places it hasn't, because it's exhausting to be, so I would need a little bit more time to recover than say others, which I would think was a really lazy thing to do. But now I'm finally self-love, understanding that way I can create access and be a safe person for myself. What was the second question?
We're coming to the end now. I've just had the notification on the watch. She's got 10 minutes now. Okay, we've got 10 minutes. So I'd like anyone to ask questions. No question is stupid. No question will be personalized. So don't be embarrassed. We're all up here and we're all with you. Gentleman at the front there. Just wait for the mic.
I'm a neurodiverse man myself, and being able to see you guys and what you guys are doing, I think is absolutely amazing. So double thumbs up to all of you guys in the panel right now. One thing I'd like to ask you guys is, how do you guys empower some of your students or people you know that also might have neurodiverse traits to their personality? I want to see how you guys can empower your students.
Okay, anyone want? Yes, Lucy.
I think validating people's questions is like number one. I think neurodivergent dancers in general are going to have more questions because they're facing more like questions like for themselves. And so I think I feel like a lot of the time choreographers go, that's a really good question, as a way to like stall and think of an answer when someone asks a question. But what I've really found recently is if you answer the question and then say, that was a really great question, by the way, so I can't hear myself. It was a really great question, by the way. It really like validates people. It makes them go, oh, like I did a valid contribution. It's not just me being the annoying one always asking questions. It's making sure that they know that they're okay to ask those questions, because I feel like there's a bit of a stigma around that.
Anyone else want to make a point there? No? Okay. Any other questions? In the corner there. There's just a microphone's coming to you.
Hello. So I've got a daughter that's got autism. She aspires to be a professional dancer as she gets older, but the one thing that she does struggle with, she's got physical disability as well, being Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. We struggle with getting her facial expressions, her performance out of her face, because her autism is what pushes her to be more introverted rather than being able to express herself. So inside she's doing everything that she needs to do, but on the outside it doesn't look like she's enjoying it, or it doesn't look like she's putting the facial performance together, and that's what's letting her down. Is there any advice you could give for that?
Okay, are you on Instagram?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so follow ND. That's N for November, D for neurodiversity, dancer. And I can't remember whether there's an underscore there. So she's a professional dancer. She's British, but she's working in Germany, I think, at the moment, in a ballet company. So follow her. You're going to get advice there. Then there's another one called Bendy Bodies. That's Dr. Linda Bluestein, I think she pronounces it. She's out in America, a good friend of mine. And that's talking about Ehlers-Danlos. Is there anyone else that you would suggest to follow on Ehlers-Danlos?
Kate Stanforth.
Oh, Kate Stanforth,
is
she's
super
in a
good,
wheelchair. She's a wheelchair dancer.
Yeah, and she's got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well, and so she
Yeah.
does lots of classes with people in wheelchairs and without, and working with people with EDS to, like tackle some of the things that you mentioned.
Okay, Joe, you had something.
Well, I don't, I don't have any recommendations for physically disabled dancers, but but speaking from experience in regards to facial expressions, with the autistic school that I grew up in, we used to be given like these what would I think you would call these emojis now, but they were much different to what they were back then. They were like these yellow faces with like exaggerated facial expressions, expressing happiness, sadness, anger, shock, scared, or something, and also like drama therapy sessions, which I guess given the right drama therapist who's expressive and animated enough, could I think from my personal experience allowed me to explore those emotions a bit more and be able to at some point express that in my face. I don't know if that could be of help to your daughter.
Sophie, would you like to... Oh, Chloe. Yes. Got it in his brain. It's my ADHD. Chloe, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, so we've actually had someone with the same condition and they struggled as well. We appreciated her movement. Her movement showed her feelings, which were important because she was unable to do it through facially. As long as she was showing it physically, which she was, because that was her craft. She loved dancing. So as long as she goes, shows it and expresses herself through the movement, that is what came across as important in our class, because she was doing the best she could, and your daughter is too. I don't know any other recommendations to follow, but yeah, that's the advice I'll give.
I'm sorry we haven't been able to fully answer your question, but at least you've got some leads to go on. One more question, we've got 5 minutes to go. One more. Where's the mic? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
I'm auditioning for like colleges this September, and my one worry is when we have when you're saying like inclusivity in like classes, so they're like smaller and there's you can like leave the class, because I can do that at the moment at my school, but I know when I go to an audition you can't do that, and there's going to be like loads of people in the room, and you can't just go up to the judge panel and go, oh sorry, can I leave for 5 minutes? Because like then you're going to miss half the choreography, and it's like then you think, what's the point in like at the moment at my school being able to do that kind of thing? Because I feel like otherwise when I get to my audition I won't be used to having to deal with all of that.
These are auditions for colleges?
Yeah.
Are they? Okay. Well, they need to be able to understand your disability. I know it sounds awful, a disability. And they must do, I forgot what it's called. What's it called?
So I have a learning agreement, or when you get into the professional industry, you can have an access rider, and that kind of tells your employer or schools in advance of your access needs. I think my biggest tip would be don't say what your diagnosis is, because I think everyone comes through with their own assumptions on how your diagnoses or conditions will affect you. But you can write down I need to have rest breaks every 20 minutes. I need to do this, that, and the other. And if a school doesn't follow that, that's very dodgy. I don't really know what advice I can give for that, but I would say have a document so you don't feel like you have to go up and advocate for yourself and say, hey, I need to do this on the day. If you flag it up in advance, and hopefully that will give them enough warning to be able to adapt to your access needs.
Okay, was that all right? All right. Thank you very much for sitting through and not falling asleep. And each one of the panel is now going to give their contact details, not necessarily phone numbers, but their social media thing. I've already done mine. So starting at the end, Annette.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Annette UK, ANNETTE UK, also on Linktree.
My main social medias are Instagram and TikTok, and you can find me on there at Lucy Isabel Turner. That's ISABEL. And on Facebook and Twitter, I think I'm at Lucy Turner Dancer. But usually if you search Lucy Turner Dance, you can find my website and all of those shenanigans.
We are on Instagram as Sensational Dance, Sensational Dance _. And on Facebook, we are Sensational, but Sen, S-E-N with a dash, Sational, and then Dance. We're on there as well.
Okay. So you can find me on Instagram at The Real Galea. That's my main account, but my entertainment account is Joey Chike. Joey Chike is CHIKE, or Joey _Chike. I also have a TikTok account at Joey Chike. In regards to the dance group I'm with, Atypical with Attitude, we also have an Instagram and Facebook at Atypical with Attitude, or AWA. And right now we are in the works making a website. So it's in the works. It will be out, I think, either late this year or next year. But yeah, if you follow us on Instagram at Atypical with Attitude, we'll let everyone know when the website comes out, and we would love to spread awareness of neurodiversity, ADHD, autism in dance, and spread the awareness, and who knows, we could come perform at your school and spread as much awareness as possible. So yeah, those are my contacts.
Thanks, Joe. Pass the mic to Ash.
Thank you, Joe. So I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is let's start that again, at Ash Mukherjee Official. So that's ASH Mukherjee, which is MUKHERJEE, Ash Mukherjee Official. I post a lot of content on how to heal from neurodivergent trauma. There's also a piece that I've co-written with my director, John Nedgley Bond, called Vishnu's Got My Back, which is about growing up queer and neurodivergent in post-colonial Calcutta, which is in India. And it charts the story of how healing can happen and thriving can happen in a performer when they start to embrace their neuroexpansiveness.
Thank you. I'll be around for about a quarter of an hour or so if anyone wants to come and speak with me, and I don't know whether the others will be around as well. I'd like a big hand for the panel, please. Thank you very much. Thank you.